everyone. Welcome to my May reading wrap up and sneeze fest because my allergies are driving me crazy today. So if you see any funny faces that I am unable to edit out, that's why. Because it's allergy season and it's driving me crazy. But we're still going to have fun. We're still going to talk about all the books that I read in May. And yeah, as long as I can remember what they're about. 24 books were read this month. That is fantastic. And I had 2 DNFs, which I'm going to talk about first. I usually try to include them if I am able to. The first DNF I had of May was Growing Up Urkel by Jaleel White. I honestly had high hopes for this one because I love Jaleel White. He's one of my absolute favorite actors. I love Family Matters. It is now one of my go-to comfort shows. But there was just a tad too much language throughout, and usually I could get past a couple, but it started getting too much around probably the 30 to 40% mark. So it just wasn't for me, unfortunately. And it was a lot about his career during Family Matters, which I loved, but I was okay. So I decided to just put down that book and move on. And then the other DNF that I had for May is The Binding by Bridget Collins. This is probably my oldest book on my shelf because I unhauled a lot of books before I became a booktuber. This is probably one of my oldest books, if not no, I do have one that's older, at least one, but I just couldn't get into it. There was quite a bit of language in this book, but it was just super slow. I made it about, I would say maybe 20 to 30% of the way through the audiobook. I tried to give it a chance and I was just, unfortunately, slightly bored throughout the listening experience because I listened to the audiobook. So I'm going to unhaul this one, and I also have the second one on my bookshelf, so I can unhaul that one too. I don't think I will pick them up again. So I have the sprayed edges and a hardcover of the second one. So I was hoping, this is an ARC copy, which is a nice ARC copy if I'm being honest. It's probably the nicest ARC copy that I've ever had. But yes, unfortunately, not for me, so I'll be unhauling The Bindings and the sequel, which is The Betrayals by Bridget Collins. So those are my DNFs for May. Let's go on to the books I read. I finished 2 Archie comic books this month, and I don't go through them, talking about them. They're just fun, lighthearted reads that I enjoy, listening to, reading, because they're not on audio. That would be an interesting experience. Archie comics on audio. They need to do that and give me, credit for coming up with that idea. So I read, see, my brain and allergies do not combine. I read 2 Archie comic books on to the other books that I read for the month. So I finished reading 2 middle grade books. I read Soar by Joan Bauer. I'm trying to slowly make my way through her backlist because she is one of my favorite middle grade authors. And this one was a little bit more, I would say, on the sadder side, but not too bad. So in this book, we're following a boy. I think he's 12, and I believe he had a heart transplant. Don't quote me though, but I believe it was a heart transplant. And so he has to be careful of what he does, but he loves baseball. And so him and his dad end up moving to a different location for his dad's work, and he finds the baseball team there at the school that he goes to, and they really need help because there's a lot of bad rumors going around about the baseball team. So baseball's getting a pretty bad rap at this school, and he decides to take on the role of coaching the team and getting them back into the game. So it's very much sports related. I'm not a huge sports fan, and I will say I enjoy more sports romances than I do just contemporary sports books. So it was okay. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Almost Home by Joan Bauer. I finished 2 on my backlist of Joan Bauer books. So that's really good for me to get off 2 on my backlist of authors that I love. So this one is about 12-year-old Sugar and her mother, Ariba. And this is a foster home situation. I've been reading a lot about foster homes lately in between the last couple months, so that's kind of interesting. But in this one, we're following Sugar, and something happens where they lose their house and head for Chicago. And she's really sad about that. She had her school and everything, but her mom just isn't doing well. She's slowly going downhill. She isn't doing well, and they lose their house. So they have to move to Chicago. And she ends up being put into foster care with a puppy she ends up finding in, I can't remember where she finds the puppy, but her puppy Shush. And she finds different ways to to be allowed to bring the dog into the foster home system, because obviously, you're probably not allowed to bring a dog, but she finds her ways to charm herself and the dog into these people's lives. And it's just such a sweet story. It also is a little bit heartbreaking, but I think this story has a ringing of hope, which I really did love in this story. So it was really good. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. I binge read the entire Natural series. I ended up reading the first book, which was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I buddy read that with my friend over at Bookburger. I will link her channel down below if you want to check her out. But we decided to buddy read this in May, and she didn't have the time, but I ended up binge reading the whole series. And I will say overall, it was probably about a 4-star series. I really did enjoy it. The first book I gave 5 stars, and the rest of the series was 4, except for the novella, which was 4.5 in the series. That one I only gave 3 stars. I don't think the series needed it. So if you're new and haven't read the Natural series, this is a mainstream YA book series. And I will say, for the most part, it was clean. There was a minimal language. There was a few bad words, but very, very few. But I will say there was one character that I felt was loosey-goosey, if you know that term. And yes, so she was a bit, she was a little bit much, I will say. And it wasn't super graphic, but I really didn't like her character at all. I wish we kind of knew more about her. Maybe it would have helped, but yeah, just because of that reason, she was way too loosey-goosey, especially for a teen. I was like, we did not need her to be that loosey-goosey. Anyways, but other than that, I really enjoyed the storytelling. We're following these, is it 14s? I think there's 14s, but they each have certain abilities that they're very, very good at, depending on, they're great at reading people. They're good at statistics. They're good at like psychology type things. So they're all tasked by the CIA to become part of this new program where these young adults are going to help solve these cold cases. Well, they end up getting more involved in cases that are going on right now instead of cold cases. So they get involved and it becomes more dangerous to them as well as to the CIA. So I really did enjoy it, and I enjoyed that the storyline was pretty much a continuation storyline between each book, except for the novella, 4.5. I don't think it needed it. I really didn't. It jumped the series about 10 years, I think, in the future or something like that. And I didn't think it was needed, honestly. I didn't really enjoy the mystery that much. And I felt that part of the mystery in 4.5 could be told in the next one that's coming out, book 5 coming out in this fall, I think. So overall, a pretty good series. But there were some things that I didn't particularly like in the books, but I did really like the mysteries. The Baby on My Doorstep by Miranda Smith. This was a pretty new release that came out. I was really excited to read. I found the premise very interesting. We're following a woman who is at home, and she hears somebody knock at the door, and she goes and answers it, and there's a baby on her doorstep. And she has no idea what that baby's doing there. So she calls child services, and they ask her to give DNA because the baby was found on a doorstep. And she finds out that she's related to that baby somehow. And I really loved the mystery aspect. I loved the caring of her and her husband and how they reconnect through that baby found on the doorstep. And I did like that part. I only gave it 3 stars because I found it so predictable. So predictable. There were a few surprises along the way, but mostly it was pretty predictable on what was going on. I figured it out pretty early on what was happening. So overall, I only gave it 3 stars because it was predictable. If it was not, probably would have gotten a higher rating for me. The Fallback Plan by Melanie Jacobson. This is book 2 in the Sweater Weather series, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I didn't like it as much as the first book, but I still enjoyed it. So this is about a bad boy and golden girl, and this girl comes back to her hometown, and she ends up opening up a bar. And I will say there are trigger warnings for alcohol abuse in this book. So just as a heads up, before you read it and get into it, it does have that in the book. But she does open up a bar, and there's this ridiculous crime in the town that happens, and she ends up getting involved with what used to be the bad boy, but he's now, I'm trying to think if it's spoiling anything. It's not spoiling anything, but he's the new sheriff. So the bad boy turned sheriff of the small town comes into the rescue, and it was a sweet romance, but I felt there was, I don't know, it was, if this makes sense, it was a good combination of plot to character, but there wasn't much to either, if that makes sense. So it was just an okay romance. I did like it, but overall, it was just an average romance for me. What the Wind Knows by Amy Harmon. I finally took this book off my bookshelf and got it read. Who is this girl? I am reading books that I've had on my TBR, or trying to, for the longest time. I've had this book, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe longer. I think I was gifted this by somebody in one of my book groups. But I finally read What the Wind Knows, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It's between 4 and 4.5 stars for me. I really did love the ending. Let me just say that right away. The ending was fantastic. My favorite part in the whole book. I loved how it wrapped up, and I'm glad it wrapped up that way. So this one, we're following Anne Gallagher, and she grew up listening to her grandfather's stories about Ireland. Well, she's always wanted to go back to Ireland to visit with him and go back. And he always tells her, it's too dangerous. You can't go back right now. And she's like, but why? I want to go back to Ireland. And he says, go back after I pass away. And so after he passes away, she goes back to Ireland to spread his ashes. And something happens where she ends up finding herself traveling back in time. And when she travels back in time, she's injured, and she's put into the care of a local doctor there. And there's a young boy there who seems familiar to her, and she is mistaken for his mother. And it's a good 100 years before, so it's a long ways back in the past. And I just really did enjoy the storytelling. There's a lot of history in this book, though, so if you enjoy history and learning about, Ireland back in 1921, there is a lot of history in this story, so I think that's why my enjoyment was a little bit lower. But I did enjoy the romance. I really enjoyed the characters in this story. I will say there is 1 or 2 very quick fade to black scenes in this book, but it was quick and not even a sentence or 2. Very, very quick, but it was there, just so you guys know. I always let you guys know, and if it was anything longer, it would have been, of course, a DNF for me. But it was a fade to black in this story. But overall, I did like it, and I would enjoy picking up more of Amy Harmon's books to see if I enjoy them. I know there's a few that I have on my radar that I'd like to try. Dark Rage by Aurora Noir. This is a clean mafia romance. These are honestly, people would say mafia romances are guilty pleasure. They're really not, because number one, I choose ones that are clean, and I just really, really enjoy Aurora Noir. These 2 authors are fantastic, and I just have a great time with it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I think this was my lowest rating in this series, and it really wasn't based on not liking the characters or the storytelling. Both were fantastic. I loved the characters in this 4th book or 3rd book. I can't remember which one it is. It's one of those in the series, but I did enjoy the characters, as I said, as a whole. The only thing I had with this one was that I felt it was, even though it was a long book, I think it was 500 pages, it felt slightly rushed in some parts. Some parts I just felt some of the sentences were a bit rushed in the editing or whatever. So for me, as I said, characters and storytelling were top notch. I absolutely loved it. So in this one, I won't try to spoil anything really, but in this one, I will say though, this does have trigger warnings for trafficking, I believe, in it. But we're following Fiona, and she is in the safe haven of this mafia town, and she is tasked to bring in one of the guy's single dad trope daughter into her bakery to give her an internship type thing. So she can learn all about the bakery so she can have her own bakery later on. So we're following Fiona and we're following Max, and he is the guy from the first book. We only see little snippets of his life, but this is his story, his and Fiona's, and I really did enjoy their characters and their romance and just how wonderful Max was. And yeah, so just be aware there is trigger warnings of that plus PTSD in the book. So just as a heads up, but I do enjoy the whole series as a whole, and yeah, check it out if you want to. It's an entertaining series. Vigilant Vows by Kes Avalon. This is another closed door mafia romance book. This is book 4 in Bound by Vows series, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. But I will say this series, compared to the Roar Noir series, this one does have a bit more of a heavier makeout scene. There is no off-page love scenes or on-page, but there is usually one heavier makeout scene in the book. If it went past that, of course, as I said, I would DNF it. But I did really enjoy this one a lot. I really, really liked the characters as well as the setting. Of course, mafia, you know. So this is a fake marriage situation where this girl ends up finding out that her sister passed away, and she's put in charge of caring for her nephew, of which she had no idea even existed. So she gets tasked to take care of her baby. Well, the father of the child wants the child back, but her sister put her name in for the custody of her baby if something happened to her. So she's trying to figure out, she has to go all the way to, I think, Texas to contest that, you know, she's the one that her mother her sister wanted her to have the baby. And yes, his father is not a good man, but we're also happy that there's a hero in her life, Jason, who is her boss and goes with her to help her with the trial in Texas. And I just really, really enjoyed it. There is, again, trigger warnings for trafficking in this book, so just as a heads up and awareness going into it. I had a few books like that this past month as well, but I think it's always good to be aware of what goes on in the world, and if it's told in fiction, you know, people might not know, you know, what happens in the world. And so I really did enjoy it. As I said, the characters were amazing, and I love the relationship between Jason and, can never remember characters' names, Jason and Cora. It's Cora, Jason and Cora. But I did enjoy this one, and Cora's in previous books because I remember that name. I just don't remember what situation she was in the previous books. I can't remember, but very, very good book. Most of the other books that I read, I have physically, so that's always a good thing to get books off my bookshelves. Miss Beth Betancourt by Ava Marie Everson. I read this one for a review, so I will link my review playlist down below if you want to know more about any of these books. I think most of these books, plus a couple extra, but most of these were review books, so I do already have a review for them here on YouTube and on Instagram. But in this one, we're following a girl named Beth Betancourt. And she wakes up in her home. She's all alone. She wakes up in her home to find a strange man snoring in one of the other bedrooms. So she calls the police. He's brought to prison, and she realizes she made a mistake because there's an army duffel bag in the room. There's a letter, and she realizes that he's not just somebody who is a squatter in her house. There must have been a mistake that happened. So she goes and discovers that it was a mistake. He just accidentally found his way into her house some way. And it's their sweet romance. It's set between war eras, 1962. So I did enjoy it. I will say this is more character driven than plot driven. I didn't enjoy the plot as much. It was more, I would say, like, it reminded me of a wartime era Hallmark movie, if that makes sense. So not a whole lot happening, but it was a sweet romance overall. So you'll get to see their relationship and the mistake, of course, that happened. And yeah, I did enjoy it. I think I said in my book review that the ex-boyfriend was ew. I said that, and he's not as ick as other ex-boyfriends I've read. But of course, he's still ick. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars. The Pursuit of Civility by Jen Turano. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. Really, really enjoyed it. very close to 5 stars. I love Jen Toronto's humor. She's just funny, lighthearted, historical romance. And this one we're following a woman named Annalise Merriweather, and she is the sister of the girl from the first book in the Merriweather Academy for Young Ladies series. And I did really enjoy Annalise's story. Her sister goes on her honeymoon in this book, and she is tasked to be the new schoolmaster for the school for young ladies. Well, she ends up misplacing a lot of her students in right from the beginning, and she says, I don't know if I'm up to being the headmaster of this school. I just don't think I am. But she ends up befriending a man who is the brother of one of the girls at her school, and one of the girls ends up going missing, and they're tasked to find out what happened to her. There's a little bit of treasure hunting in this story, which, you know, if treasure hunting is involved in a book, I'm almost guaranteed to enjoy it, and I did enjoy it. So lots of antics going on, a little bit of, you have to suspend your belief in things happening a little bit in this book, but I had a great time with it. There's also a review for this book on my channel. This is The Good Fortune of Miss Robbins by Melanie Dickerson. This is her first Regency era romance in her new series, and I don't know what the series is called yet. I think it's in the front because I looked it up before. I just can never remember. Oh, there's not. Okay, I don't know what the series is called, but we will find out. So in this book, we're following a girl named Charlotte, and she accepts a governess position for the Earl of Brookhaven's siblings, because it's also a little bit of single father trope a little bit, because he's taking care of his siblings. So she goes and becomes the governess for his kids, or well, his siblings. And she is there to find a love match. But her love match includes maybe the cook, the gardener, the butler, whatever. So she doesn't even have the Earl on her list, of course not. So she goes there and realizes that, well, half the staff in the house are all probably well into their 50s, if not older. And I just found it so very sweet. I love the relationship between the Earl and the governess. I thought they were so sweet. And I just had a great time with the story. It was lots of fun. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. If you want to know more about it, I do have a full review on this one as well. Chase the Light by Suzanne Woods Fisher. This is book 2 in her National Parks Summer series, and I think, don't quote me, I'm thinking this could be my favorite in the series so far. I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed it when I read it, and this one does have a bit of a love triangle, and this is one love triangle that I wasn't sure quite how it was going to end up. I'm really happy with how it ended out. I think it was it was the better option. I feel so very happy with how it ended. But we're following the Acadia National Park Ranger Scout Johnson, and she discovers a note in a lighthouse that leads her plus the head ranger and a newspaper reporter, as well as the representative of, I'm not sure what the Native American, the Penobscot heritage, the Penobscot heritage in that area, and he is tasked to also find a missing treasure that is led through that note that she finds in the lighthouse. So they pretty much have to very quickly find the treasure, because before news spreads, and there's going to be a ton of treasure hunters in the national park, and so it goes pretty quick paced, national treasure type pace, where you solve clue by clue and quickly go through. So that was one thing that may have been just a bit too quick in the story, was we were just solving clues way too fast. But I mean, you can only do so much in a 300 or less page book. So it was a little bit quick, but I did really enjoy the romance, as I said, and I liked how it all wrapped up. And as well, of course, treasure hunting. Who's not going to like that? You might not. I don't know. You might not enjoy treasure hunting stories, but I do. I do enjoy them. Finding Lady Enderley by Joanna Davidson Politano. This was one of my favorites of the month. I gave this one 5 stars. I'm going slowly through my backlist of Joanna Davidson Politano books, and this one is one of my favorites of hers that I've read so far. This is probably tied with Lost Melody. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it so much, and it's a little bit of a My Fair Lady retelling. I had so much fun. So this one I'm following Raina, and Raina is a rag woman in London, and she's found by a handsome stranger that appears to her and says, I need you to take on the role of this, I think is she just a lady? I can't remember. I don't think she's a baroness or anything, but she's tasked to become, take the role of a lady in this manor in the country. And she goes ahead and takes it because she does need the money. She has lost her love. She doesn't know what happened to the man that she loves. So she goes there and discovers there's a lot more happening around this mystery of this lady and this manor, because we don't even know who this lady is. Who is she? What's going on? What's happening? And the staff all appears to know her. There's a painting in the house that resembles her. So she's wondering what's going on, and she's trying to figure out what's happening before her life becomes in peril. And I just loved it so much. As I said, this will be staying on my shelves. I loved it that much. And it might make my top favorites of the year because I really did enjoy it. Lone Star Sweetheart by Shannon Sue Dunlap. Thank you, Shannon, for sending me a copy of this book to read and talk about with you all, because I loved it. And I love Shannon Sue Dunlap. I love her so much. She is so sweet. So I finally read book 1. I have book 2 and book 3. So I have to read them because I really love this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. I loved it. And this started following a woman named Catherine. And she's very, very passionate, but her mouth can kind of run away with her. And she gets in trouble because of that. But her faith is helping her, and she's really trying hard to stop her mouth from talking and be quiet before she says something she'll regret. Well, she ends up being tasked by the mayor's wife to become her candidate campaign manager for the wife of the mayor, because the mayor and his wife are running against each other in the mayor race. Political race. We'll just call it that. But it was so cute. It's a down-home, sweet Texas romance, and I loved the romance and the characters. We have Catherine, as I said, and Ryan. Ryan is her arch nemesis because he's working for the mayor on his side of things. And I just love both characters. I thought they were so sweet. The faith in Shannon Sue Dunlap stories is so great, and it just weaves its way into the characters' lives. I just love that. And I will say it is a second chance faith story where a character does lose their faith. And yeah, I won't spoil anything, but I really did enjoy this book a lot, and I can't wait to read book 2. The Manhattan Confessions by Jocelyn Green. This is book 3, and I think the final book in the... I hate when there's never a title of a series in the front of the book. On Central Park series. On Central Park by Jocelyn Green. And this was my favorite in the series. I really enjoyed the Manhattan Confessions. They're all set in Manhattan around usually the historical library, historic museums. So in this we're following a character named Ivy in the New York Historical Society Library. And she's dedicated to preserve Manhattan's history. And she decides to tell the story of a woman who has a pretty shocking life story about her time when she came to New York. And secrets come out, and everyone is trying to find out who this lady is that Ivy wrote about. And she's, tick-a-lock. She's not telling anybody who the lady is because, she didn't want anybody to know, who, but she wanted to tell her life story, but she didn't want people to know her name. So people are telling her that they're related to her. People are following her home. And it's just, yes, it's a pretty chaotic mystery of, being stalked in the streets and, trying to find out who this woman is and what really dark secret she has about Manhattan and her journey. And it also is a story about Ivy's cousin, who is an immigrant from Italy, and her struggles trying to come to Ellis Island as well in Manhattan. So I really did enjoy it. As I said, my favorite book in the series. I love this one a lot. So I give this one 5 stars, if I didn't say. As Dawn Breaks by Kate Breslin. This was my book club read for, was it May or was it April? It was April. It was April's Patreon book club read, but I really try hard to read the book a day or two before we meet the author, so it is very, very fresh in my mind. Well, I had the author chat with Kate Breslin, and she is such a delight. I had so much fun talking to her over on my Patreon. She was so sweet, so kind, and I think this is the longest I've chatted with an author. We chatted for about, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes before I even clicked live. And then after I stopped the stream, we talked for another half hour. I think it was the longest I've ever talked with an author, but she was so kind and sweet to come over on my Patreon to do a book club chat. It was great. But anyways, I adored this book. I gave it 5 stars, and I think it might be my favorite read that we've had so far on Patreon, that we've had since I started. It's one of my favorites. So I loved As Dawn Breaks. But in this book, we're following a woman who, she has a tumultuous relationship with her. I think it's her aunt and her uncle. She was taken in with her brothers into their home, and her uncle is not a very nice man at all. And she's trying to get away, as soon as possible. And her uncle is trying to marry her off to some random guy. Well, she works at this munitions plant, I think that's what it is, during World War I believe. And something happens where there is a huge accident, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's her chance to escape. And she runs, and I just loved it. And this book, I believe, is set a little bit in Scotland as well as England. I think those are the two countries that are in the book. But I just loved it. I loved the little mystery aspect. I loved, her always having to keep an eye on her back to make sure, her father, or not father, but her uncle, doesn't know where she is. And I just really, really enjoyed the whole story, and finding out from Kate Breslin how she came up with the idea. And it was just, as I said, a really, really great book, and I loved it. Really had a great time with that one. Into a Golden Era by Gabrielle Meyer. This is book 7 in her Timeless series. If you're new and you have not picked this series up, please do. You'll not be disappointed at a time crosser series. In this series, we follow, in each book, it could be a different family, part of the same family, what have you, but we're following people who are born with a birthmark, and those who are born with birthmarks, that's hard to say, born with bookmarks, yes, bookmarks, born with birthmarks, live 2 different lives, and they live, say, in 1812 and one in 1920. So they live 2 separate lives, and by the time they turn a certain age, on their birthday, they're allowed to choose which timeline they will stay in. But of course, that always doesn't turn out, because God always has his plans. But this book, it's in my top 2. It's in my top 2 of the series. I adored this one so much. This one, we're following a woman named Allie, and she lives in 1849 and 1929. 1849 during the beginnings of the California Gold Rush, and then 1929 during the golden age of Hollywood. So each era has to do with gold in some way, and I just loved that tie-in. It was so great. I just had a great time with it. So in the modern timeline, most modern anyways, of 1929, Allie is an up-and-coming starlet in her family's family-owned and family-run film studio, but it's on the brink of ruin, and they're filming what might be their last movie of The Little Woman. Well, she goes on an idea that maybe she could perchance help them out, maybe. So she comes up with a plan as well. And there's a Hollywood heartthrob who has a really bad reputation, and so they fake date during that golden era. And then back in the past, her father is sick, and the characters also have 2 families, so it's kind of interesting. One family knows about the time crosses because you inherit it, and the other timeline, they don't know what goes on, because you don't miss any time in between both times. So her father isn't doing well, and they end up in this place where it's the seediest part of the California Gold Rush town, and she's brought in by this lady who runs this, I guess, diner type situation in the 1800s, and she helps out during that era. And I just love the characters and the romance. So good. I had such a great time with this book. I couldn't wait to find out what happened in each timeline. This series, honestly, is one of the only series where I tend to genuinely enjoy both timelines usually. One maybe a little bit more than the other, but not much. And this one was my favorite. And I have a whole review of this one as well. I think it actually comes out, either came out yesterday or next week. One of those, but it'll be out. But I really did enjoy this one. And as I said, one of my new favorites in the series. Then the last book I have to talk about with you all is The Valkyrie by Carrie Cotton. This is book four in her Huntress series. And it is my favorite couple in the series. I did not think anything was going to beat the couple in The Viking, but this couple is my top favorite. And the hero in the story is now probably my favorite hero, pretty close to Wesley from The Princess Bride, because this hero is just the most patient, wonderful, kind hero you will ever find in a book. I loved him so much. And it is a very much, I didn't think I enjoyed the trope of who did this to you trope in romance, but read this book, you will absolutely know what I'm talking about when you read this book. And I will say this one does deal with, I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say it does have to do with a previous assault and PTSD in it. So just as a heads up going into this book, but I think the author handled it extremely well. I will say there was a lot less plot in this story than the other books, but the character development and the love of the characters just bumped it up to 6 stars for me. I love this book so much. I think, honestly, if it weren't for the two main characters, it probably would have gotten 3 stars, because as I said, there's not a whole lot of plot going on. It's very much character driven in this book and her series, but I loved the two main romance couple. And it's not even really a romance until far into the book. If you want a slow burn romance, this is also a slow burn romance. But just their relationship and the care he has for this girl, I just loved it. So I don't know what I can say without spoiling anything, but we're following a woman who is part of this Viking village, and she ran off and comes home, and she is very leery to tell anybody what happened during her year. She had a very hard year of abuse and torture and everything, so that is on her mind almost every day. She doesn't want to spend time with her family, her mom, or the village, so she is pretty much sent off to this small little cabin or longhouse on the other side of the town, and she's there with two, I don't know what you would call them. They're not really maids. They're just housekeepers, or really nice ladies. And the man who rescued her is tasked to be her guardian. And as I said, it's such a great book. I love the whole series. There's one more. It's called The Songbird, and I am saving it for my camping trip. And I cannot wait to read it. I think it's going to be great. I might even start it before my camping trip, just because I really want to get to this book so bad. So that is the last book that I have for you. I had some really great reads this month. Nothing under 3 stars aside from my DNF. So it was a really great reading month. Let me know what your favorite read of May was down in the comments. I would love to know, and I love chatting with you down in the comments. It always makes my day when you leave a comment. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day, and I will see you all in the next video.